Dr. Bishoyi to speak on the subject. Let me give a brief introduction of Dr. Jatin Bishoyi. Okay. Dr. Jatin Bishoyi is the head of the PC Department of Philosophy, Kalikot University, Berhampur. He is again the nodal officer of the B.Ed and the M.Ed program in Kalikot University. He is also the NCC lieutenant in the Army wing, so he carries a lot of responsibilities in the university. As regarding his achievements, what I see is he qualified in the Odisha Public Service Commission examination for the lecturership, and he got qualified in 1909, and he joined in NC College Jajpur. He was later transferred to DAV College Karaput and then to SBRG Women's College Berhampur. From SBRG Women's College, he is transferred to Kalikot Autonomous University, which later got changed into Kalikot University. So, if we look into his academic achievements, he did his master's degree from Utkal University and was awarded the doctoral degree by Jawaharlal Nehru University. He worked on the thesis on logical atomism and logical positivism. He made a comparative analysis on this under the guidance of Professor R.P. Singh and Professor Suman Gupta. He has successfully completed two projects, one project by NCRT New Delhi and another project by University Grants Commission New Delhi. So we have Dr. Bishoyi with us. Philosophy family is really fortunate to have him. We have seen him in the webinar series on Western philosophy. It was an interesting session that day, and I hope today's session would be even interesting like the earlier one. So I invite now Dr. Jatin Bishoyi to deliver his lecture on moral relativism and ethical subjectivism. Over to Dr. Jatin Bishoyi for his lecture.
Thank you, Bhai. Can you hear me, Bhai?
Yes, you are audible. You are audible. You are audible. You are audible.
So, thank you, sir, for your nice introductions, and thanks the organizing team leader, so-called Pramod sirs, and all the members, active member of this family, and so-called who is Devashish sir, and Maharana sir, and Pattavan sir. And once again, thanks to you all for keeping patience to be here, listening me at least 1 hour. And special thanks to the member of philosophy for giving me a chance and opportunity to deliver on the topic once again. So, in the lecture series of ethics and metaethics, I have been assigned to speak on the topic ethical relativism and ethical subjectivism. And I know these two concepts. These two concepts are highlighted in Greeks, in later Greek period, in postmodern era, during existential period, and in the period of phenomenologies, and particularly in the period of analytic movement periods. So during analytic period, the metaethics thinkers, they have discussed and analyzed the concept of moral relativism and moral subjectivism very systematically and clearly. So what I think for practical purposes, for the interest of my student and for the interest of many, I think I will analyze before these two concepts. I will analyze what is actually ethics and what is metaethics. Then I will go to the topic. Because in our syllabus, in PG syllabus, we have this paper, and we used to teach ethics and metaethics. So let me start with ethics. So to start these two concepts of ethical subjectivism and ethical relativism, Here I would like to quote Albert Camus, and the one of the famous existential thinker, influential existential thinker. A man without ethics is wild beast loosed upon this world. This is the view of Albert Camus, and next the view of Jean-Paul Sartre. What we might call everyday morality is exclusive of ethical anguish. So how ethics is important in human life? How ethics is the not just a contemplation of individual consciousness, but an assumption of moral reasonings, inevitably cognate, analogous to the basic interest of human beings, their sentient values. Scrupulous, pedantic, efficacy standards may change, but moral reasoning validate the praxis that are conventionally, veridically sanctioned by the moral standard, religion, law, politics, everyday existing discipline of mankind. This is the very view of this is the view related to the philosophy of existentialism, phenomenology, and postmodernism. So I am just going to highlight I am just going to highlight the basic aspect of ethics. As you know, ethics we define it as a normative science, moral science. It is a science of human conduct, behavior, all these things. But ethics, particularly, it is having four important aspects, that is called normative ethics, descriptive ethics, applied ethics, substantial ethics, and meta-ethics. In normative ethics, what exactly we do? We fix some norm and standard, and we determine human action whether to be good or bad, right or wrong. This is a normative ethics, because ethics studies human actions, because ethics, as we know, understand, ethics is a normative science because ethics evaluate human actions. It prescribes what sort of action is good action, what sort of action is bad action. It tells what should be, what should not be, in the form of what should be, what should not be. So he fixes standards, norm. On the basis of this, it prescribes what action we should do, what action we should not do. So in moral normative ethics, basically we have four important theories. One is called virtue-based ethical theories, another is called teleological ethical theories, and next one is called consequentialism ethical theory, and the last one is called deontological ethical theory. These are the four important ethical theories that we normally find in normative ethics. So virtue-based ethical theories, it was discussed by Aristotle how virtue is the important aspect in promoting ethics, and ethics as a discipline of human life. As Socrates said, virtue is knowledge. Plato is talking about four kinds of virtues: courage, knowledge, wisdom, temperance, and Aristotle is talking about the 9 categories, 9 types of virtue, all these things. So it is Aristotle discussed eudaimonia ethics, Nicomachean ethics in his name of his student and in name of his sons. So these are the about virtue ethics. This is so many things that I am not going to discuss. And in teleological ethics, particularly teleo means purpose and end. End is to be taken and justify the means. An action is called good if the end is good, if the purpose of the action is good. Suppose somebody is doing some action, if the purpose and end of the action is good, then the action itself is considered to be good. This is called teleological ethics. And in teleological ethics, we fix various standards like hedonism, egotism, altruism, perfectionism, and intuitionism. These are, as you know, in hedonism, hedon is the standard of morality, and in perfectionism, it is the self-realization, the standard of morality, like that. In intuition, conscience is the standard of morality, all these things. So, but in case of consequential ethics, we have seen that the consequence, results which is produced out of the action is the ultimate standard of morality. Suppose we say something is good, something is bad on the basis of its consequence, result that the action produces. That means on the basis of result, we determine the goodness or badness of action. But in many books, we have seen that both teleological and consequentialism theory, they have taken analogously, similarly. But I think they are different theories and they are different standard of morality, teleological and consequentialism. And deontological theory, so Anup sir just discussed, it is the deont. Deont means the duty-based ethical theory. It is not something, action is good on the basis of his duty, on the basis of command. So categorical imperative, unconditional command. We do an action not on the basis of consequence, not on the basis of anything, simply on the basis of the action. Duty for duty's sake. We do duty for the sake of duty only. Just I have seen in the Niskama Karma, this is this type of actions we do. That means in this is particularly in divine, this is deontological, in deontological theory of actions we naturally we discuss actually divine command theory, authoritarian command theory, and Kantianism. But what I think personally, I think divine command theory, even though many people justify and many thinkers justify that divine command theory is deontological aspect of ethical theory, but I think it is the Kantianism is the only, because ethics, it is a science of human actions. Particularly, it justifies human beings only, human beings and human action, human living. It is a science of human being as a whole. It is not related to God or like that. Anyway, but it is discussed there. And in kind of Kantian theory, Kant's theory is called rigorism, rationalism, like that. And according to Kant, the only good thing is goodwill, the only thing that is good. So it is kind of unconditional command. We have to do the things for the sake of the thing itself, not for the sake of any other things. That means it is an unconditional command. So as the maxim says that, three maxims Kant prescribe. First maxims, we must do an action in such a way that our actions should not be universalized. We should not treat ourselves and treat others as a means, but should treat always as an end. Act as a member of the kingdom of man. These are three maxims. We have to obey these three principles without any conditions. That's why it is, they are called unconditional command. This is the most important aspect of ethics in Kant's philosophy, without seeing any result. And next, we are talking about descriptive ethics. Slide is visual.
They have to give permission.
Okay, we just do it. Okay, next we are discussing about descriptive ethics. In case of, let me show the slide. Actually, I think. Okay, wait.
No, they are saying you must grant permission in order to screen.
You must grant permission. Cannot save your screen. Hello, Om Bhai. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
I want to show the slide, but it is they're writing that you have to show the permissions of the authority. I think Devasi sir, kindly see it.
Yes, sir. I'm not seeing such things.
You must grant permission in order to screen share. If you want to share the screen, you must take the permission of the. That's in present now. Okay. One again. Not visible. Okay, we show. Okay, anyway, it is not visible actually there. Okay, anyway. So then we are talking about the descriptive ethics. So in the descriptive ethics, we are talking, generally we discuss the study of people belief about morality. How do we behave in particular moral situations? It is an empirical investigations of the morality. We study the certain moral and ethical taboos in society. What are the taboos that in society? We study the nature of behavior of social institutions like marriage, family, all these things. And it is the value and norm-filled approach to ethics. That means we should not follow any particular norm while judging human actions. So it is mostly discussed by psychologists, anthropologists, sociologists. Then we are talking about, then we are discussing about the applied ethics. You know, it is the most important branch of ethics. Nowadays, everywhere there is a discussion about applied ethics. How to apply ethical principles to sort out all the moral conflict and moral dilemma. So it is more humanitarian in nature. It is discussing the practical application and implication of moral considerations. So there are various domains of the applicability of applied ethics, so-called environmental ethics, business ethics, biomedical ethics, ethics of human being, human cloning, animal ethics, web ethics, literature ethics, ethics of care, many more. And next, this is the new trend in ethics that I am going to highlight, that is called substantive ethics. In substantive ethics, what exactly we have seen that this is an ethic branch of ethics which was developed by some Oxford philosopher of analytical schools in the late 20th century. So the name of this ethics to give the substantive answer to many ethical problems. It is a reintroduction of normative ethics. It is a denial of naturalistic fallacy which is committed by G. Moore. I will discuss in his work how he committed, how he not committed, how he shown these fallacies. But this substantive ethics denies the naturalistic fallacy. And these substantive ethics particularly developed by the late analytical thinkers, and it answers to ethical problem very clearly and substantive way without any depth of it. So it is just an interpolation and extrapolation and so to say interpolation of all the ethical theories. So substantive normalization, determination, analysis techniques, all are essential for the ethical dilemma. So it attempts to sort out all these ethical problem, and mainly Amscombe, Strong, Combox, Taylor, other philosophers, they are engaged in this type of ethics. Now coming to the main important issue, that is called meta ethics. So meta ethics, meta generally we know that meta means beyond and above, and in meta we have a meta narrative in postmodernism concept, and we have metaphysics. There is an essence called philosophy. So shall we consider meta ethics in this way? Meta ethics is not to leave ethics, but to confine your limitation within ethical language, ethical words. It is not the first order truth. It is called second order truth. It means it is a simply analysis of logical analysis of moral language. So analysis of the language is the essence of the ethics. This is called meta ethics. It is called the ethics of the ethics because the very source of ethics, the very origin, avenues of ethics are being discussed by the meta ethics. Meta ethics, it is the core of philosophy. All philosophical questions are discussed in meta ethics, and it studies the source and genesis of the ethical behavior and moral judgment, and analysis of ethical terms like good, bad, right, wrong, justice, injustice, all these things, ought, is, all these concepts are clearly and logically analyzed by metaethics, and it traces out the nature and meaning of ethical term, ethical judgment. It uses the method of phenomenology. I will tell how it uses the method of phenomenology in asking the metaethical questions. It is a moral motivations, and it is a moral ideal of science, and it is it asks many questions. I will discuss how the question of metaethics, what are the questions it asks. Before that, I'm just telling you that the problem of metaethics actually it was first discussed by G. Moore, who is called the father of British analytic philosophy. G. Moore, in his work Principia Ethica, he discussed the problem of ethics of non-naturalism. I will tell you, I will discuss, and later on R.M. Hare, in his work that is called the language of moral, in this work he discussed the problem of metaethics. Even A.J. Ayer in his book Language, Truth and Logic, in one of the chapter Critique of Theology and Ethics, he discussed the emotivism as a theory, that is called metaethical problem, and this is called Stevenson Ethics and Language, the work written by Stevenson. Here he discusses the metaethical problems. So metaethics primarily it asks some of the important major questions. It asks first semantic question. He asks, what is semanticism? What is semantic question? He asks, what is the meaning of the word that we use in moral science, that we use in moral language? That is the first question it asks, because ordinary analytic philosophy consists of four important branches, so-called logical atomism, logical positivism, ordinary language school Oxford, and this Cambridge schools. And in all these schools, they primarily discuss the particularly while they are highlighting language, they study the syntactical form of language, the pragmatic form of language, and called the semiotic form of language and semantic form of language. But meta-ethician, the philosophy of meta-ethics, the philosopher of meta-ethics, they discuss the semantic aspect of the language. They study the semantic aspect of language. What is the meaning of the ethical language, ethical words that you use in moral language? Secondly, it asks the question, the metaphysical question: what is the status of this metaphysical language? What is the status of good? It is asking so many metaphysical. What is the status of good, right, in our moral philosophies? It is asking metaphysical questions. Then it is asking the epistemological questions. How do we know the good? How to know the right? What is the source of having good actions? What is the source of having bad action? Where can we develop these moral sentiments, feeling, emotion, all these things? So this is the questions. Then it asks the phenomenological question. Phenomenological question in the sense that what I have seen that meta-ethics somehow similar to phenomenology, because phenomenology study the base of the philosophy, the base of the philosophy of science. It is called the science of the science, and the science, rigorous science. Where do we develop all the philosophical quests? Where do we develop all the scientific quests? Similarly, the meta-ethics put the question, phenomenal question: where do we develop this ethical problem or these ethical questions? How do we have such questions? Because we know that in phenomenology we say that intentionality, when man is in ego, he is in different way, but man is, when he is in supramental ego, he develops his intentionality, consciousness. Through consciousness, intentionality, he just sees the appearance of the phenomena and derive the essence by the method of editing and bracketing essence from the phenomena. In the same way, in the meta-ethics philosopher, the philosopher of meta-ethics, they ask this question that what is the source and what is the base of all the ethical problem? Because all persons are not having the same ethical attitudes and emotions. So this is the first question they ask. Then it has psychological questions. So why do we have this kind of feeling, willing? It asks the questions of psychological questions regarding the status of a ethical problem, and it asks the objective questions that where does the problem of ethics lies? Why do we have such problem? Whether this problem are objective, subjective, all these things. So these are some important meta-ethical problems. In meta-ethics, particularly, we have two kind of theories. One is called moral realism, cognitivism. Another is called moral anti-realism, so-called non-cognitivism. And under the head of cognitivism, we study ethical naturalism, ethical non-naturalism, and supernaturalism, and subjectivism, and relativism. And under the head of anti-realism, non-cognitivism, we study emotivism, eschatism, expressism, quasi-realism, projectivism, and moral fictionalism, moral nihilism, moral skepticism, all these theories. So all these theories, so-called cognitive theory, firstly metaethical theory in a very wider sense, we divide in two categories: cognitivism and non-cognitivism. Some thinkers, a moral philosopher, they claim that all the ethical expression, they have cognitive meaning. Cognitive meaning, they have a literal meaning. They are the belief. Ethical statement are just the belief. When the belief is expressed in language, it is called statement. So which must be either true and false. Like logic, we say that we have some kind of moral belief. When we express our belief in language, it is called statement, expression that must be either true or false. So according to cognitive thinker, moral expression or moral statement may be either true or false. So truth act, that truth act means truth and falsity. These are the two important conditions of morality. This is called cognitivism. And according to non-cognitivism, moral theories, all the moral statement, moral expressions, They are just the expression of human feelings, emotions. It is the expression of belief which cannot be judged either to be true or false. They don't have any cognitive. Cognitive is literal meaning, like the statement of science, psychology, and sociology. They are not reducible to any non-ethical statement. So according to non-cognitive, they are just simply the expression of human feeling and emotions which cannot be judged, which cannot be determined either to be true or false. So under moral cognitivism and moral realism, we discuss ethical naturalism, ethical non-naturalism, and supernaturalism, subjectivism, and relativism, which is my topic. And ethical naturalism says that moral statement, they can be expressed, they can be interpreted, they can be determined in terms of non-ethical statement. Suppose we say that good can be determined in terms of pleasure and happiness, because pleasure and happiness uh, are the non-natural property or non-ethical properties. So they can be explained in terms of natural properties, like the properties that we have seen in nature. Suppose we can define like the statement that we define in psychology, sociology, that we define in other science. We can also define moral statement in that way. That is called naturalism. But in case of non-naturalism, it is said that moral statement cannot be reduced any non-natural properties. That means moral statement, moral properties, good or bad, good, right, wrong, bad, justice, they cannot be described or determined in terms of non-natural properties. So, and supernaturalism, it says that it can be defined, it can be explained, moral properties, moral statement can be explained in terms of some kind of supernatural commands, God command. Okay, and subjective and relativism I will discuss, but in case of moral anti-realism, non-cognitivism, they says that morality is just an expression of human feelings, and it is just an expression of human feeling and emotions. Emotivism, the theory of emotivism, as it is explained by A.J. Ayer and Stevenson, I told that what is morality? Morality is just the having the feeling, emotions. Suppose I have seen somebody suffering. If I have that kind of feeling and attitude within me, then no doubt I am having some kind of morality within me. That kind of if arousing feeling, that is a kind of provocation of feeling within me is the only matters. Not necessarily that I am going to have that fellow. That is the secondary thing. But later on, Stevenson, while he is explaining that no, emotivism implies having emotions and evocation of emotions and stimulation of emotion and actions towards others by this emotion. But according to AJ, no, it is a kind of feeling. If I say that somebody is suffering, somebody is having pain, if I realize that he or she is having pain, then that is enough, and that is called ethics, that I am some kind of ethics. And somebody is seeing that and bypass it, it is not necessary, so many people are suffering, let it be there. So that he does not have that kind of feeling, because we are basically the analytic philosophers, they give importance on the ethics of knowing than the ethics of doing. We are in a very wider sense ethics of knowing. How we because we are the philosopher, we are not the social worker, we are not going to go and help others. We just realize, if you have that kind of feeling. Yesterday I was listening Pramod sir's deliberation. He was saying that somebody was realizing that how animal is suffering. That is the ethics. What emotivism is saying. That is the ethics. If somebody is having that kind of feeling and emotion within himself, that somebody is having this kind of pain, if somebody feels that kind of pain, that is the ethics according to emotivism. But according to prescriptivism, morality, it does not describe the fact. They are the prescriptive language. They are the language which is written there, and we have to realize the language only. It is not the question of applicability, not applicability. Yesterday, some of us said that how in cigarette and the level of cigarette, how it is written there. But everybody smoking is injurious to health. Everybody sees this, that how it is written there. Everybody while smoking, before smoking, they see it smoking is injurious to health, but it is just a prescriptive language. It is not descriptive. It is just prescriptive language for them. That's why he is not applying it in the real situation. But that language, it creates some kind of emotion within us. If that language, according to metaethical theory, that kind of language also evokes, arouse the feelings how to do good action. That is called prescriptivism. Similarly, the view of expressism, how morality can be expressed, what are the conditions and norms to express. There is no fixed standard and norms to express. You have to fix one standard to express the morality. Then we are talking quasi-realism. Quasi-realism, it is called projective, kind of projectivism. That means morality is just like a we see something in projector. In projector, if you see that somebody is dancing, somebody is doing all this, so we are just imagining the things are there in the projector. In the same way, morality is that kind of things that we have seen. Similarly, all these things, nihilism, skepticism, all these things are there. They are discussed by the these thinkers. Now coming to the topic, moral subjectivism and moral relativism. These are the two important topics that I am going to discuss. Both the concept, moral subjectivism and moral relativism, both are the correlated concepts actually. But in metaethics, they are separated concepts. But before metaethics, they are correlated concepts. And subjectivism and relativism, they have many sides. There are epistemological, ontological, political. There are so many subjectivism and relativism. But in a very generic sense, we can say both are correlative concepts. And the Protagoras, the sophist of the Protagoras, is known as the father of relativism and subjectivism. He discussed about this theory of relativism, how things are there. That man is the measure of all things, of things which are there, of things which are there, they are not. This is the things. That means it is the man which determines which actions are good, which actions are bad. So man means not the social man, it is the individual man which is playing a vital role in determining the morality of one's life. So both the theories, they do not accept any fixed universal and moral principles. Okay, according to them, all the principles are relative and conditional and subjective. Like we have seen that the same theory is explained by Jainism, relativism, that is called Syadava, the relativity of knowledge. That I am not going to touch because this is an Indian aspect. I am just focusing on this aspect only. Okay. So how moral judgment are interpretative? Because it does not have any fixed meaning. It is just interpretation, the reinterpretation of the concepts only. So it denies any kind of independence and absolute value of morality. There is nothing called fixed morality, fixed values, because moral knowledge is infinite. It cannot be confined to a particular discipline, particular area, a particular code of conduct. It is infinite. So moral knowledge is just a continuum knowledge. It is a process. It is not a product. So that's why it is a continuum. It is infinite, and there is a diversified views on moralities. And moral judgment are changeable, dynamic. As we change, our thought is changing. We are changing. In that way, morality or moral judgment, moral expression, moral thought, moral way are changing. There is no interconnection, necessary connection among the moral beliefs. That is pointed by Hume. Okay, so each morality is atomic in nature. There is not an organic relation among the moral statement and moral judgments. So there are different type of relativism that I am going to focus on. Relative. There are different type of relativism. We are talking about cultural relativism, social relativism, individual relativism, political relativism, epistemological relativisms, and ethical relativism, ontological relativism, and metaphysical relativism. And I will now highlight in brief what is this ethical relativism. Okay, so ethical relativism, moral relativism claims that there is no objective universal moral values. Ethical claims are relative, subjective, social, cultural, historical, conditional, and it depends, it determined according to situation and circumstances. Okay, we cannot logically validate the truth, falsity of the ethical statement. It is true or false, but we cannot validate logically. That means it is depends on one's context, one's choice. So affirmation of relative forms believe in the common aphorism, that is, when in Rome, do as the Roman do. Because I'm it means whenever we go to some place, we have to follow the ethics, code of conduct that is practiced there. We should not frame our own ethics. That means relativism means there are different kind of, it is related to particular individual, particular community, particular social group, particular race, that kind of thing, not to one's individual only. So it denies human omniscient, infallible truth, absolute truth, inevitable experiment, established scientific truth, and many more things. Because there is no universal moral principle and rule. There is a diversified code of conduct, because each society has its own code of conduct and moral principles that I will discuss in the questionnaire section if you have any doubts. Okay, so we can this ethical relativism, we can, it is kind of prospectivism. We can say that in postmodern it is called contextualism. We may say some are saying it is pluralism, but there is a difference. But these are the various way of ethical relativisms. There are many thinkers from postmodern thinkers: Richard Rorty and Protagoras, Herodotus, Spiro, Spinoza, David Hume, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Ruth Wendick, Edward Ostermark, G. Moore, R.M. Water. There's so many ethical relativist thinkers. So now coming to the moral subjectivism. So relativism justify moral expression, moral statement by one group, by a section of people, by society, by culture, by race, by nations, by a country. But here subjectivism, it approves the goodness or bad action in terms of one's choice only. So it is the one's approval, disapproval of individual choice. Suppose if I approve this action is good, that is good. If I approve this action is bad, that is bad. That means it is an individual choice. It is an individual agreement, disagreement upon the actions, moral actions. So it is both cognitive as well non-cognitive theory. Some are saying there are two groups of subjective, non-cognitive groups. They are saying that it cannot be expressed in terms of truth and truth conditions, truth and falsity condition, and in case of cognitivism, they claim that it can be expressed in terms of truth conditions. Then it is totally against any kind of objectivism and absolutism, because objective truth and absolute truth is totally wrong, because we cannot apply any principle, any law in an absolute and objective way. This is also we have seen in postmodern context. In postmodern, we have seen undecidability. The question of undecidability, we cannot decide what to do. That is a kind of subjectivism. So it is against it is against any kind of objective moral concept. All the moral concepts are subjective. They are subject to change. So moral arbitrariness, variability is the essence of ethical statement. Immutable truth in ethical statements are acceptable. Okay, so morality, it is a kind of internalization. It is an internalization of moral feelings. It is a self-contemplation. It is said by Kierkegaard. It is self-contemplations. It is self-reflections. That is called morality, and it is subject to individual choice, individual taste. It is agreeable and disagreeable, approval, disapproval feeling. What is true for you is true for you. Not, it is not true for me as well. And what is true for me is true for me, not to you. This is what subjective concepts. So again, subjectivism is against any kind of determinism, because it is against any kind of causal determinism. So because there is nothing called fixed. It is totally determined by one's choice, one's approval, disapproval of feelings, emotions. Okay, So the attitude, opinion, personal preference, feelings, all these things are given important in the philosophy of moral subjectivism. Judgment about human conduct is not determined by any conditions, any objective standard, any moral condition and standard, by any external perceptions. So intrinsic value is the essence of the subjective. That means it does not accept anything external to it, but any kind of extrinsic values. Value, a thing is value by itself. It is value by one's choice and individual approvals. So it supports mental attitude theory and mental reaction theories. These are so there are many subjective thinkers. Adam Smith, David Hume. These are the and Saint Augustine's, Scottus, William Occam, and Soren Kierkegaard, Jean-Paul Sartre, Kopal, and Linda Trinker. So many things. Thomas Aquinas. They are all are subjective thinkers. So there are many kind of subjectivism we have discussed: simple subjectivism, general subjectivism, individual subjectivism, divine subjectivism, so-called divine command theory, and ideal observer theory. These all are the subjectivism. Because in case of general subjectivism, it says that in individual subjectivism, that individual justifies, approves, disapproves a particular action, a moral expression. But in case of social general subjectivism, social subjectivism, the society approves the action as to be good or bad. In case of divine command theory, it is the divine, that is the God, that approves the actions. It is very long back. It was discussed by Plato in his theory, that how it is that whatever good things, whatever thing is good, what I do that is good is approved by God, and what God does that is good, that is approved by God. It means any action, my action, if it is good, it is approved by God, and if God commands any action, that is good action. That means it is just justifying good action in terms of divine theory. And in the ideal observer theory, we have seen that some kind of persons, ideal persons, which justifies the action. It means the ideal person is impartial, competent authority who decide which action is good action, which action is wrong action. These are the various theories about the subjectivism. And lastly, I will conclude with Friedrich Nietzsche quotations that I must set the bad test of wanting to agree with many. Good is no longer good when one's neighbor mouth it. And how I should there be a common good? The term contradicts itself. Whatever can be common always has little value. In the end, it must be as it is, always has been. Great things remain for the great, avishesh for the profound, nonsense, shudders for the refined, and in brief, all that is rare is rare. This is about Friedrich Nietzsche. Thank you, Om Bhai. I think I have completed within 40 minutes. Now I want questions sessions. Thank you, Om Bhai. Thank you for understanding philosophy.
Thank you, Dr. Jatin Bishoyi, for your nice lecture. After making a good basis for your lecture, you have very nicely defended the thesis of ethical relativism as an ethical theory that maintains that there can be no universal principle or law that is applicable to all people in all contexts and situations. And also you have maintained that on the basis of ethical subjectivism, the moral judgments, they are just the expressions of one's own personal beliefs or attitudes, or say approvals or disapprovals. Thus, there can be no objective moral truths. So this is how you try to defend the general thesis of ethical relativism and ethical subjectivism. I think there are a number of questions in the chat box. Now over to Debasis Sadangi to take on the question and answer session. and see what are the questions in the chat box and put the questions before the speaker, Dr. Jatin Bishoyi.
Thank you very much, sir. And I must congratulate Jatin Bishoyi, sir, for his nice presentation. So there are a few questions in the chat box. First question is from Ratnakar Gajendra, sir. Jatin, sir, is it audible? Hello?
Yes, that is audible.
Yes. Ratnakar Gajendra, sir, want to know ethical standards are normative. It is prescriptive. How do you say about the descriptive ethics?
Yes, ethical standards are normative. Okay, descriptive ethics is different kind of ethics. It is not related to normative ethics. In normative, because ethics, actually the word ethics itself we usually understand in three basic ways. First, we in etymological sense to understand in the sense of that ethos. Ethos means social custom habits. That you follow social custom habits, then it is called ethics in ancient time. Because next ethics in generic sense, in people in general sense, they understand the word ethics means that which is right and that is good. But in philosophy, ethics is called normative science. Because in ethics, we only judges human action, which actions are good action, which actions are bad action. Because man cannot live without action. We perform many action, voluntary action. We perform many action. It means ethics only consider the voluntary action of human beings. So he judges and fixes moral standard. By fixing moral standard, it judges human actions. So, but in case of descriptive ethics, it is the different kind of ethics. It is not normative ethics. In descriptive ethics, I told that in descriptive ethics is discussed by sociologists, anthropologists, psychologists. They directly concern. It is an empirical investigation of ethical practice. Suppose somebody is doing ethical work there, social work there. We are going there. Simply how he is doing or he is doing. What is the object of doing all this ethical? It is an empirical investigation of ethical questions. It is not a normative way of judging. It is a value-free actions. That means, suppose somebody is doing some kind of ethical work. Suppose so many people are doing ethical work, helping others, servicing others, and working in various orphan centers. So these are the issues about the descriptive ethics, and normative ethics different. Normative ethics, and in philosophy we are not concerned with descriptive ethics. In philosophy we are much more concerned with normative ethics, because in philosophy we judge which actions are good action, which action are bad action, which action are wrong action, or which action are bad action. That is correctness, incorrectness. This is the kind of ethics. And in case of subjectivism, it is not a standard. Subjectivism, it is a meta-ethical theory, because in meta-ethics and normative ethics there is a difference. In meta-ethics, in normative ethics we determine human actions, but in meta-ethics we not determine. Meta-ethics discusses the logical analysis of the language of moral. It means it discusses the origin and source of the ethical concept. It means where can we develop this concept? How do we develop this concept? Why do we have these concepts? So subjectivism, that kind of thing. Subjectivism is individual approval and disapproval of concepts, ethical concepts. So it is different from normative. Normative ethics and meta ethics both are isolated. So that's why meta ethics is called ethics of the ethics, and meta ethics is not related to in normative ethics. We simply judge the human actions, but in meta ethics you should not judge the human action. So judging human actions in terms of subjectivism is not there in meta ethics. Okay, so judging human action in terms of hedonism, in terms of rigorism, in terms of intuitionism, that is there. In terms of utilitarianism, that is there. But we should not judge human action in terms of subjectivism. It is a kind of meta-ethical theories that I discussed, that I told from the very beginning.
Thank you very much, sir. Then the next question is, in ethics, we discuss the ought. Voluntary actions are judged on the basis of certain standards of morality. This is the problem of is to ought. How do you explain the subjectivism in this framework?
Okay. Okay. Actually, subjectivism, I told that subjectivism is a metaethical theory. Okay. But before that, subjectivism was there. Because when we say the same action is good for me, for other it may not be good. Suppose by applying, suppose I apply the standard of hedonism. If I apply the standard of hedonism, the action may be good to me. But if I apply the standard of rigorism, the action may not be good to me. Suppose somebody is doing some party and he is getting pleasure out of it. Somebody is drinking and he is getting pleasure out of it. He or she, some people they are getting pleasure out of it. So it is good because they are not creating any problem for the others. Pleasure is the standard of morality. But if we consider in terms of rigorism, in terms of region, if we ask the regions, then we say that it is not good. Drinking liquor and doing party, okay, it is not good. It is bad in terms of rigorism. If you ask regions, region is practical region. That Kant is talking about two kind of region. If you ask pure region, it is different. If you ask the practical region, it is different. The same action. So it is a kind of subjectivism because from one standpoint it is good, from another standpoint it is bad. So from utilitarian standpoint, we see the utility. Utility means the usefulness of the actions. If the action is useful, then that is good. If the action is not useful, then that is not. If I am speaking something, if the audience is getting something, then my deliberation is good. If they are not getting anything, then that is bad. That means good and bad is judged in terms of actions, results. That is called action, results. That is called utilitarianism. But in case of hedonism, if I am getting pleasure, then my action may be good, but that is not good. You have to calculate, we have to see the result, practically efficacy, we have to see the usefulness of the actions. If I am sitting here, if I am expressing, since we are on the topic, if many people are getting benefit out of it, then my action is good. That is utilitarian standpoint. From another standpoint, that action may not be good. So there is because in ethics we have many standards. So in standards, we only judge the human action, we only determine human action, which action are good action, which action are bad action, what should be good action, what should not be good action. It prescribes the actions. Okay, so in that way it is also subjectivism. But ethical subjectivism as a theory, as a standard, as a theory, moral theory, it is described by meta-ethics philosopher only, meta-ethicians only. Okay, next question.
Thank you, sir. Then the next question is from Rasmi Prabha Mahanti. She wants to know what is ethical relativism and how does it differ from ethical egoism?
Ethical egoism. Okay, egotism. Actually, ethical egotism and ethical relativism. Ethical egotism and ethical altruism, these are all discussed in normative ethics. Again, I am saying this is not discussed. You are just connecting normative ethics with meta ethics. This is a confusion we have. The person is asking, because again I am saying that this is normative ethics. In normative ethics, we have four kind of ethics. Okay, we have in ethics, in normative ethics, we judge the human action only. Okay, by using the standard. Hedonism is a standard, egotism is a standard, altruism is a standard, okay, perfection is a standard. These are standard. But in meta-ethics, you don't have that standard. You do not judge the action to be good and bad. In meta-ethics, we only attempt to define the ethical concept. First important task, I told you, we want to know the epistemology of the ethical concept. We want to know the meaning of the ethical concept. We want to know the source and genesis of the ethical concepts. All these things. But in normative ethics, you are confusing two ethics. But okay, anyway, I am telling. So in egotism, according to egotism, if action is justified on the basis of one's own pleasures, that is called egotism. It is not the maximum pleasure. The maximum pleasure is not in maximum numbers. That is called altruism. If I am getting pleasure, if I am doing some actions, and if I am getting pleasure out of it, then my action is good. Suppose I am doing some kind of action. That is not, action is neither good or bad as such. Action is action only. Action is to be judged. Okay, action is neither good or bad. Suppose I am doing some action. If I justify my action, and if I think that my action is good, if I am getting pleasure out of it, in top of hedonism, egotism, if I am getting pleasure out of it, then my action is good. Nothing is. But in case of meta-ethics, it is different things. So we don't connect these two ethics. Meta-ethics and these normative ethics, both are different kind of ethics. Ethics, so-called ethics, because in at UG level we teach the student ethics only, normative ethics only. We are teaching standard only, normative ethics only. But meta-ethics we are teaching at PG level because they both have different ethics. Okay, next.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then the next question is from Neeraj Kumar Sharma. He wants to know, we know that others are involved in multiple interactions in society. Do you think ethical subjectivism is justified? Will it not be resulting in ethical solipsism?
Okay, ethical solipsism we are talking about. Okay, actually that is ethical solipsism I left due to time constraint. I left solipsism and ethical skepticism. That is there in meta-ethical theory, because in meta-ethics we have two kind of theory. One is called ethical cognitivism and non-cognitivism, and solipsism is coming under the ethical non-cognitivism theory. Because in solipsism, exactly what we are doing, if my action is good, if I approve the action to be good, if my mind approves the action to be good, and I do not take into account the actions of others, I only consider what is my action. I only the moral judgment must be approved by me only. Moral expression must be approved by me only, and my own self approve it. That is called solipsism. I do not accept what others are saying, and because these solipsism, they are the very much accepted by modern thinkers. Even because in postmodernism we have discussed this theory. In Nietzsche he discussed the kind of nihilism, that is one kind of solipsism. So that is the things, because nothing, because in solipsism nothing is called good or bad. Okay, so there is no fixed moral standard. So what I think to be good, what my sentiment, my feelings, my emotion approves to be good and good, approves the action to be good, then that action will be considered as good. Okay, so it should not accept that kind of things.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then the next question is from Satyajit Sahu. He wants to know, can you please define the subjectivism that when it comes to particular subject, an individual, it may be deceive himself on the basis only individual's point of view.
Okay, actually we are talking, that's why there is a social subjectivism, a general subjectivism, because in philosophy we are saying that individual self and social self. This is the ethical concept, social, because if I approve an actions, my individuality, if my individual, my thought, my conscience approve an action, if my emotion approve an actions, approve an action to be good, then that action is considered to be good. But because sometimes it happens, that's why there is a social subjectivism. Social means social self. Technically we have used this concept because we just want to justify many actions. Okay, because suppose there is suppose I say murder is good because my thought, my emotion approve it, but social self cannot approve this action. Murder is good. Okay, because murder can never be good. That's why there is a social self. That means in subjectivism the moral judgment is to be approved in terms of individual self as well as social self. Okay, social self. Okay, that's why. So no contradiction will. I think no contradiction will be there.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Then the next question is from Om Narayan Rao, sir. He wants to know, ethical subjectivism cannot resolve ethical dilemmas. Hence, it fails to assert what is right in the given set of circumstances. How do you see this issue?
No. Okay. Okay. Actually, ethical subjectivism cannot justify which action is right or wrong. It only approves which action are good, which action are bad, because ethical subjectivism it is one's own feelings toward actions. It wants positive response toward actions. Which actions are good, which actions are wrong actions. That means it is not a standard of judging or justifying moral actions. Okay, so that's why it is not a standard at all. It is not a norm and a standard. Subjectivism and objectivism, these are not the standard in ethics. It is just a approval, disapproval of human actions only. Okay, that's why in UG level we are not having this in our syllabus, because we the individual approve an actions to be good, and that action may not be good. Okay, but it is to be taken, it is to be tested in terms of social subjectivism, and in terms of this is called ideal observer theory. This theory is just a group of person justify an actions, not any particular individual, a group of persons which are rationals, okay, which are impartial, they justify an actions. Again, it justify action in terms of divine command theories. Okay, in that way, it only attempts to justify actions. It only attempts to justify action, but it should not judge action. Which action should be the good action? Which action should be the bad actions? It only justify the actions. What I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your nice response. There are no more questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Once again, thank you very much. And now it's over to Rao, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Debasis Sadangi, for nicely coordinating the question and answer session. So overall, both the sessions were very nice, and both the sessions were very informative, and both the sessions attracted questions from the participants, and we see that all are benefited. I think all are benefited by both the sessions. So it's time that I should thank Dr. Jatin Bishoyi for his nice lecture, and also I take the responsibility of thanking Dr. Anupray for his lecture in the first session. So above all, I should thank Dr. Professor Pramod Kumar Das for initiating this webinar series, and this series is all because of him. I should thank even Debasis Sadangi, who is just not in this. He's not just meant for this webinar today. He's meant for this recording this event and putting it in the YouTube so that it can be referred for all time. So he's making a great job. He's doing a great job, and I should really thank him for his job. And he's so sincere in his job that he's early to his job. Say he joins 15 to 20 minutes early. So that's how he's so sincere, and I should thank him. So I should thank all the participants. I should thank all the coordinators for making this webinar series a success. So I thank everybody, all the participants, and one and all involved in making this webinar series a successful one. Thank you.
Thank you.
All.
Thank you. Thank you. Debasis sir, ये slide टा कहीं देखा लगी देखिए तो?
Sir, ମୁଁ ଜାଣିପାରୁନି ମାନେ କଣ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ହେଇଛି ମାନେ
एक्चुअली ମୁଁ ଭାବୁଛି ଯିଏ ମାନେ ଆଡମିନ ଅଛି ସିଏ ବୋଧେ ଦେଖେଇ ପାରିବେ ବୋଧେ କଣ ଲେଖୁଛି ପରମିଶନ ପାଇଁ ଲେଖିଲା ତ ଟିକେ ଆପଣ ସ୍ଲାଇଡ ର ଦେଖେଇଲାନି ତ
ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ମୋଡ କୁ ଗଲେ ଏଠି ଯୋଉଟା ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ବଟନ ଅଛି ନା
ହଁ ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ରେ ଗଲି ସେଠି ହେଲାନି ବା ସେ ଗଲ ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଟାଇମ ହେଇଥିଲା ଏତେ ହେଲାନି ଓକେ थैंक यू
थैंक यू वेरी मच
थैंक यू Slide देखा कौन है?
So now with this today's webinar ends. Okay, thank you everybody.
टोटल किसी देखा है नहीं? पिक्चर ना खाली ऑडियो तो स्लाइड